Okay, we're recording now. And if this is going to be a small meeting, you're going to get a lot of time back because we won't do breakout rooms. I want to pick your brain on a couple of things. So, you know, out of respect, let's go ahead and get started. Everybody here was here on time. I'm hoping that we can take turns introducing ourselves and the organizations or people we represent. Chris Gray, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Chris Gray. I am on the board of directors for one more month of Housing Hope. And then I will be term limited out, but I will still remain on the East County Regional Board. And hopefully in a year I can run for the main board again. So it's been 9 years I've been on the board.
You're a lifer.
Yeah. And what's really nice is they didn't want me to leave. So they actually extended my term limit. So
when we have
nice.
term limits, I'll extend your term limit too.
Thanks, Joe.
Chief Jolly, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Jolly. I'm the Chief of Police with Monroe Police Department, and I have just about got to my 4th year here.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. What a difference you've made.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all those nods. See, it's not just it's confirmed. Pastor Michael.
I know you guys all know me. I don't know Chris McBride as well though, but I'm Pastor Michael. I coordinate Monroe Pastors Fellowship and about 35 faith congregations in a communications to them from, you know, representing the city, the school district. Any way I can get information out, I do that through emails to them. And I visit a different congregation every Sunday. We transitioned our existing congregation, Christ Church Monroe. They're still together, but it's a prayer ministry, and they're all part of other congregations now. So I get to go to different congregation every Sunday, which is my wife and I love that. It's just so great because we are accessible to them and the pastors and their wives, and want to support them in every way we can and be aware of what's going on in the valley here, so we can represent them to all of you and so many other groups that I'm a part of. I've been a chaplain with the Monroe Police and Fire for over 25 years. I'm in my 26th year. And and I love that. And on the leadership team with Joe and the others of the coalition, and been involved East County Health and Safety Network before we became a coalition. And I love all of you and everything you do. I just get excited to hear. So I'm going to shut up and let somebody else introduce themselves.
Miss Amber.
Hello, I changed my name to reflect what the kids call me at school. I go by Miss Amber. I am the student support advocate here at Park Place Middle School. I have 2 kids in our district. One is at the school with me and one's at Frank Wagner. I was volunteering for the food bank. I have a knee injury, so I have to stop doing that for a while. And that might have contributed a little. And then I volunteer at Kids Club. And I organize our community dinners to take the next step. Although I'd like to do tons of things, those are just the things that I can physically do right now. So that's really fun. And I appreciate still getting to do something other than, I guess, be a full-time worker and a mom.
Looks like you're not busy at all, Amber. And hey, I changed my name on screen to reflect what people call me. Nah, just kidding. Just kidding. Mrs. Amador. Will you
Hi,
introduce yourself?
I'm Tammy Amador. I'm one of the counselors at Park Place. That's all I got. And I changed my name to reflect who I am.
That's right. That's right. Aubrey, so glad to see you again.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Rudd. I'm the communications director for the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints Snohomish Stake, and I'm on their Just Serve board, which is like justserve.org is a nonprofit organization where you can type in where you want to serve and find service opportunities in your community. So yeah. And I don't know if you guys know about the giving machines that are in Bellevue this year, but we've got 3 international charities and 3 local charities, and you can go, and it's a vending machine, and you can go and purchase a therapy session or water for a community or ducks for a village across the globe. And those are located in Bellevue this year. And it might be awesome if you guys want to be thinking if giving machines came in any closer of just local charities that might want to partner and ever. So yeah, that's something cool that's going on in my neck of the woods.
Wonderful. And finally, Aubrey, were you able to connect with Rachel about Just Serve and maybe
Yes.
opportunities between you?
Yeah, for the cold weather shelter, and she gave me a whole list of things. So yes, and I will be contacting her again and she gave me the contacts for all the people that might need some help, which is awesome. So we're making our way through that list. Thank you, Rachel. And fun to see Amber too, like getting faces to names for the dinner, community dinner. It's awesome.
Wonderful. Rachel Adams.
Hi, I'm Rachel Adams. I am the City of Monroe Human Services Coordinator and the staff liaison for our Community Human Services Advisory Board.
Wonderful. I see we've been joined by our friend Sharon Lineweber. Sorry, Sharon Lineweber. Sharon is our implementer of Sources of Strength at Park Place Middle School. How you doing, Sharon?
I'm hanging in there. It's been a busy week. I did want to tell you though that we just did nominations for Sources of Strength peer leaders, and we're going to be sending out invitations to 20 students on tomorrow.
Wow.
To increase our numbers. So then we'll be doing another training soon.
Okay, excellent. And we do have the funding set aside for that.
That's what I thought.
So awesome.
Fantastic.
Awesome. And then I see that we have been joined by Sheridan. Sheridan, how are you?
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Now we can.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm at my practicum today, so I can hopped on for a little bit here and then we'll head out, but I'm at the high school in Linwood today, but happy to join you for when I can.
Excellent. Thank you. And our esteemed guest from Take the Next Step. Would you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Cara Deneen with Take the Next Step. I am a navigator, a resource navigator, as well as I run the Teen Mom program, Growing Together, and I also run the community dinner program.
Cara, I hope you heard that I called you esteemed.
I did. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
It's great to see you. It's been so long.
It's been a long time. So the last person to introduce themselves is our new friend, Chris McBride, the program director from Domestic Violence Services of Snohomish County. Chris and some of his team met with Superintendent Marcy Larson and started talking about the new school offerings that they're helping to push across the region. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to learn about Chris's programs together and to see if there's any overlap with our different organizations or spheres of influence, because certainly schools are one place where we might be able to work with Chris to make a difference, but schools aren't the end all be all. So I'm hoping that we can really take advantage of this opportunity with him. Chris, you're a co-host, so you can share your screen whenever you want. How are you? And tell us who you are.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, it's a pleasure to meet everybody here today. As you can see on the screen and by what Joe said, I'm Chris McBride. I am the Director of Programs with Domestic Violence Services of Snohomish County. Just to give you a little background on myself, I came to Domestic Violence Services in 2018, and I started work at our emergency shelter, working with individuals who are seeking confidential shelter in Snohomish County.
Yes. I used to-
And oh, sorry, did somebody? Oh, maybe we have somebody who's not talking to me. That's okay. I just assume everybody always is. So yes, I worked at the shelter for a couple of years. I was the assistant manager there at one point, and then after I left that position, I took over our prevention education outreach department, which we'll talk about a little bit today. It won't be the main focus of what I talk about, but it will be a big part of what I talk about. And then I ended up in the position I'm in now, which is director of programs. So I do have a presentation to share. I am very much a kinetic presenter. That is, if you want to chime in the middle, that is 100% okay with me. If you have questions that I can answer, I am more than happy to answer that as we go. But if you'd prefer to wait till the end, it's whatever you're comfortable with. Don't worry about my comfort level, because trust me, I'm good. All right. So today I'm going to present on our programs and services in Snohomish County, and I'm presenting to y'all. So that's you. That's today's date, I hope. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about statistics, what DVS's timeline has been, and then get into the programs, housing, confidential shelter, legal, prevention, education, outreach being the main four. I'm going to try to hurry through this half an hour. Sometimes I'll present for 2 hours on this subject, sometimes for a lot longer full days. So if I'm speaking too fast, if I skip over something that's of interest, again, please do not hesitate to reach out, because I love talking about this stuff and I'll do it forever. So some basic statistics that I like to point out. 80% of homeless mothers with children have DV in their backgrounds. When we are speaking of unhomed individuals at any given time, women and children can identify anywhere between 50 to 75, 95% of them can identify DV, intimate partner violence, as the main reason for them being homeless. That's discounting men, like not even touching on how many men do have this in their background, and it's not an insignificant amount, but to us it really stands out that the main driver of homelessness or unhomed women and children in the United States and across the world is intimate partner violence. Like it shows there, greater than 50% of homeless women list DV as the main reason for their homelessness. 38% of all DV survivors will experience homelessness at some point in their lifetime. And survivors generally rate the consequence of no emergency shelter as dire. So if there is no place where they can go and hide, then it becomes a dire situation to them. Washington State has 40 plus emergency shelters in the state. That's always a little bit in flux. A vast majority of them, of course, are in King County, a vast majority. The largest county for emergency shelters is King County. But for us, for emergency confidential shelters, there are about 40 in the state. The average shelter stay is about 37 nights. And there was a fatality report from 1997 to June 2020 that listed over 1,300 fatalities in the state ascribed to DV, 107 of which occurred in this county. So that's over 23 years. That's a little over four per year, just on DV alone. DVS's timeline. Again, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but I think this is important to people who are kind of embedded in the community because of what you can see at 1991 and 2008. So we started in 1976, founded as the Women's Survival Center of Snohomish County. In the 70s, this was occurring all across the United States, and we started using safe homes and hired an executive director a couple years later. Our first shelter was bought in 1981. So that means for the first 5 years of our existence, we were relying almost exclusively on safe homes and part like a network situation. We bought our first shelter in 1981. We expanded services to 1990. In 1990, that's when we entered legal housing and more supportive services rather than just being the classic shelter style intimate partner violence agency that everyone was at the time. 1991, we changed our name to Snohomish County Center for Battered Women. This is a pretty common name for our organization. We still have stickers everywhere in our organization with CBW on them. So if you were used to CBW, if there's a client or someone in your life who knows CBW, that's us. We just changed our name because inclusiveness. In 2008, we realized we wanted to make sure that anyone, no matter how they identified, were able to feel comfortable reaching out for assistance. So we changed our name to Domestic Violence Services of Snohomish County at that point. And then we got a brand new shelter and admin building in 2013 after a fairly long capital campaign. So yeah, that's kind of the background of DVS. Now I will say I do have my screen open to like 4 of you. So Joe, Sheridan, Sharon, if any one of you have questions, I'm going to see it right away if you raise your hand. Anyone else might have to actually hop off mute or press the button that raises a hand. So if I accidentally ignore you, just don't take offense. I guess unless you're Sheridan or Sharon, in which case I guess you should.
We're comfortable shouting out.
Good. I'm glad. I've had some presentations where people will just sit there the entire time, and then at the end they're like, okay, I have 23 minutes worth of questions and I can't remember them all, but we're going to go through them anyways. All right. So our housing department, I'm going to talk a little bit about that, the services that they offer. Our housing department works through some very specific grants. All of our departments have specific grants around the work they do. But our housing department has to navigate the most. If you're used to housing in the area or housing resources, you know that that's almost always the case. We do have rapid rehousing as our main way of rehoming individuals who are looking to get into a place where their abuser isn't. Are we familiar with the rapid rehousing program as a whole? Seeing a couple nods. No, and I'm seeing some no's. So I'll give a brief explanation of rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing is a state-run program, but it's multi-state, so other states do a similar thing. But the state-run housing program where a decreasing percentage of someone's rent is paid over the course of a year. So if we can get somebody into a rapid rehousing program, say from our shelter, they're staying at our shelter, they move in the rapid rehousing program. The first 3 months, maybe get paid 100% of their rent. The next 3 months, 75, the next 3 months, 50, the last 3 months, 25%. The goal of this program is to ease somebody back into self-sufficiency within the community that they choose to live in. It obviously will have some hiccups. I think anyone who's been doing this work for a while can identify pretty quickly where there might be some concerns about getting somebody into a program like this. But right now, this is the main way in which we can help individuals enter into programs or enter into housing. This program does run almost exclusively, not completely exclusively, but almost exclusively through the shelter. So if an individual is in our shelter, that's how they enter into rapid rehousing. That's how most of our housing programs work. An individual in the community who needs help, we do have some other ways in which we can assist. But for our big ones, the VAWA grants and the rapid rehousing case working style, they almost all come through our emergency shelter. When they are there, they receive case management, they receive resources, either from donations or from fundings that we get. And they work with somebody safety planning constantly, right? We are always working with them to make sure that they are safe for that year, that they are comfortable, and that they are working towards a healthy life that they want to live. We also have supportive housing. We work with the Everett Housing Authority to work with the Pivotal Point Apartments. Now, this is owned by the EHA, but it's managed by us. So we can bring somebody generally, again, from our shelter into our supportive housing at pivotal points. And for 2 years, they can stay there. They can, reform the lives that they want to live. They do have the aforementioned case management, and it's in a fairly safe location. There is a small police office in that building, and it's really a great transition between being unhomed in our shelter into a safe, supportive place. Rapid rehousing I talked about earlier. I always jump the gun on some of these. I'm just so excited. I'm not excited to talk about housing. I'll be honest with you. Housing's hard to talk about sometimes. There's other stuff I will be excited for. But it is important to identify that the clients have access to housing advocacy, emotional support, vocational support, all of that stuff whilst we're working with rapid rehousing. Our housing navigator, if somebody calls from the community, that our housing navigator can work to contact landlords, to work on early lease terminations due to DV. The state of Washington does allow for early lease terminations with proof of domestic violence within the home. So we can help facilitate that conversation with landlords. We can help gather the necessary materials to make that sort of claim. And we can also help with harassment, stalking, any sexual assault that's occurred in a place. We can work with individuals to report to police. We can talk to landlords, management companies about changing locations, about changing locks, do some of the work that a survivor maybe is in a trauma space for. And then this is the other big one that we can offer to individuals in the community who aren't necessarily coming through our shelter. And that's funds to help clients avoid homelessness. These flex funds help with deposits, first month's rent. You all can read. Yeah, it's that stuff that they can help with. This is very useful, but also a volatile set of funds. So if you have an individual who calls who needs some of these funds, it depends on what we have left in our coffers. We try to spend everything we can by the end of the year, and not so much that we can't help the very last person that year, but that's a tough balance. All right, confidential shelter. I love talking about our shelter. Our confidential shelter houses our support line. Our support line is 425-252-2873 or 425-25-ABUSE. So they are in charge of that support line. There is an advocate at that support line 24/7, 365 days a year. That is because there's an advocate at our confidential shelter 24/7, 365 days a year. So it kind of works well together in that way. Our confidential shelter always has somebody there for the clients who are there and for this line. Our emergency shelter these are some good pictures. These are some old pictures. I want to go take new pictures because like it's not hazy in real life. Like it appears to be here. But it is 52 beds, and that's 13 rooms with 4 beds apiece. Some rooms can adjoin. So if we get a family that is bigger than 4 beds can accommodate, we can put 2 rooms together, and that happens fairly often. So we're not really struggling to place larger families. That actually works out generally pretty well. There's accessibility rooms downstairs, and there's a common kitchen where residents can cook and make community dinners, and a common living area with a TV and a place where people can scroll through their phone. This is a short-term stay, and by short-term stay, we really are looking at that 37-night stay that I mentioned earlier. That isn't enough time for somebody to completely revamp their life. We definitely understand that, but we are the only confidential shelter in Snohomish County. There was a confidential shelter with Tulalip, Legacy of Healing, but unfortunately, right after COVID started, that got shut down. So we are the only emergency confidential shelter in the state. That is, we don't share our role with any state organization. We don't share our roster with anybody who asks for it, and we keep information pretty private during the stay there. During their stay, they also have supplies, basic necessities. That's clothing, toiletries, all the stuff that is required to make it day to day. And that includes backpacks, school supplies, that sort of thing. During their time, they also get peer-to-peer counseling. Women and children are only at the main, or women and children only at the main campus. But we do offer other placement to individuals who identify as men. So just because somebody's a man doesn't mean that they are excluded from our services. Oh, I have a button. But it does mean that there is a different placement system. Yeah, Aubrey.
And maybe we can just talk about this later, but I know that there are several groups or of people at our church who are usually looking to either put together backpacks or hygiene kits or things of that nature for, I've had a few different people ask about the shelter and I didn't have any information. And so I would love to just, any details you may have about like maybe what the needs are, when the needs are greatest. I'm assuming backpacks around the fall, those kind of things. We would just kind of love like a list of maybe things that you would need, how we could get them to you, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. I would love to connect you. What I'd probably end up doing is getting your information and connecting you with our facility coordinator and probably our shelter manager to see what those needs are at the moment.
All right, I'll drop that.
What that list would look like. So,
all right, I'll drop that in the chat. I'll drop my info in the chat for you.
Perfect. And I'm also going to do the same for anyone who has any questions. All right. Oh my goodness. I'm already pushing time, Joe. I'm gonna go as quickly as I can here.
And so far we're fine, Chris. As long as we can tie this up by a quarter after, I mean, a quarter to 2, we'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Quarter 2, not a quarter after. Perfect. All right. So here's our 24/7 line. I already talked about that a little bit. This is where all of our referrals come through. So if there's a service that you identify somebody is potentially needing in your life that you work with, this is the number to send them to. You also have my email. So if you have questions, I think people in the community have found it really useful to email me at certain times. But this is open 24/7. I don't work on the weekends unless there's an emergency. So this is the better way to go in a lot of cases. Susan's Youth Center is also there. We like to point this out. It's an amazing place where the kids can come out and just run and yell if it's running and yelling time, or just play games. It's full of toys and just really fun activities. Working at the shelter, there was nothing better than coming in and just seeing the kids having a blast in this place. Michael.
Yes, I had a question. Do you coordinate with the McKinney-Vento people in the schools, and do the kids in the shelters go to utilize McKinney-Vento?
Yes. So we do have 2 family advocates, well, a family advocate and a youth advocate who work with the children. If an individual is in our shelter, they are considered by Washington State to be unhomed. It's category 1 and category 4, I believe. So they qualify for McKinney-Vento. So yes, we do have a coordination system, and the schools are very familiar with us. It's almost an automatic process, which is pretty fantastic. But yeah, thank you. Great question. All right, our legal services. We have legal advocates. We do not have attorneys. So just want to make it clear that we are unable to give legal advice. However, we do provide some really important services. The services include assistance procuring a civil protection order, most commonly a domestic violence protection order, or DVPO. We also do referrals to legal aid, including Snohomish County Legal Services, Northwest Justice Project, and then all of the other stuff that you see here. Over the last couple of years, and I wasn't in charge of our legal department when this started, but I am currently in charge of it, so I know we're doing it. But over the last couple of years, we have actually had an advocate staffed out of our out of your Monroe Police Department for a day and a half every every week. So for that period, that individual prioritizes anyone from Monroe who is suffering or is looking for escape from a legal or from a domestic violence protection situation. So we've been up there for a while. It's a lot of fun to have that connection. I think my main contact has been Commander Ryan, who's amazing. And so if you get a chance to meet Commander Ryan, can't recommend it enough. And yeah, Janet Santa Cruz is our advocate up there. So she does work. Basically, if somebody needs something from Monroe, she prioritizes them during her time up there, which really helps coordinate our efforts with the police to get that individual into protection, and coordinates our efforts with police to make sure all the information is correct and we can move forward from a sound legal situation. But we also do all this other stuff that's on the screen that, boy, my pacing used to be better than this. So we're just gonna have to keep moving. I wanna make sure that I can answer any questions that come up. All right, we offer support groups throughout the county. Right now, our support groups are still teleconference. During COVID, most support groups moved into a teleconference type situation, thanks Zoom or meetings, that sort of situation. Before COVID, we were offering them in multiple locations in person. We are entering what we're considering a post-COVID world now. So here shortly, we're hoping to start some that are in person, but we will keep some teleconference options as well. We used to actually have one up in Monroe for Spanish-speaking clients that was very popular, and we're also hoping to potentially reestablish. These support groups are educational based. So educational community building. Basically, we spend a little bit of time talking about the basics of DV, red flags, healthy relationships, that sort of thing. And then we come back to building community, making sure that we are there to support the individuals who went through what the survivors have gone through. These are open to anybody who has ever experienced DV. So whether it was 20 years ago or it's still happening today, these support groups are available so long as we can do it safely. Prevention, education, outreach. This is my baby. I love prevention, education, outreach. So our prevention, education, outreach department, our goal is to give individuals in the county, specifically younger individuals, but not only younger individuals, the tools to have healthy relationships in the future. And that includes talking about healthy emotional regulation. It includes talking about identifying consent and boundaries. It's identifying appropriate ways in which you can care about the people in your lives. That I can get well into this, but that's basically the nutshell version. We go into schools. We go into youth-facing organizations like the YMCA. By the way, schools right now is only high school and middle schools. However, we are working with a elementary school to do a project, a pilot program in an elementary school. So these are all age-appropriate conversations that we are having. We're not talking about any sort of sexual relationships in places where that's not appropriate. We talk about, in middle schools, for instance, we talk about appropriate boundaries with friends, how to identify, like, how to work within the social group that you are in a way that cares for the people across from you, as well as takes care of yourself. And we hope that those seeds are planted as they move forward into more advanced relationships in high school and college. So we are in high schools, we are in middle schools, we're in youth-facing organizations like the YMCA. We are, or Boys and Girls Club we've worked with. We've worked with youth groups in the area, faith-based youth groups, to talk about these relationships. Sometimes what that looks like, if it's a super excitable group, is a game. The staff has created some really fun, really interesting ways to get people engaged with this. And we do see really positive engagement from the kids who we talk to about these things. It is amazing what this generation knows about these sorts of issues, and it's also amazing what we can still talk about and help explore. So this is also very versatile. This program is very versatile. So if somebody wants us to come in but doesn't feel comfortable with a lesson on A, B, or C, we can adjust it with them. We can work with teachers, we can work with youth organizations to make it what they feel is appropriate for the family and or for the children in front of them, especially because they're the ones who know them. They're the ones who know how they're going to respond. So this has been created as an agile program that can go anywhere that kids are and has gotten some really, really good results from it. And we are very happy and very excited about where it's been. If you have any questions about this, that's a perfect place to send me an email or ask me. And then we also do education on DV stuff. So that's me. If you want to talk about working with survivors, if you want to talk about how to have hard conversations with survivors, we've worked with the Edmonds Food Bank on something along these lines. We've worked with nursing organizations, doctors organizations, healthcare stuff. We've worked with faith-based organizations. How to identify, how to support somebody in a DV situation. That is also this program, and it's specifically me most times. I'll come in and talk about what our experience and what the education says about a program like that. This is all the stuff that I just talked about, but we also talk about, for instance, internet safety, which is something, honestly, that I think anyone our age kind of has a little bit in the back of their head, that we've identified that kids feel a lot safer on the internet than maybe the adults in their lives think they should, right? So it's those sorts of places where we can have some really healthy conversations, regardless of who the conversation is with. And we do webinars. They are generally bi-weekly, and we talk about a myriad of topics. So sometimes, like Friday, tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about why individuals stay in bad relationships, in these abusive relationships, and what the barriers are, and just talk about some of what happens in survivors' lives. Other times we'll talk about red flags, green flags in healthy relationships, and sometimes we have a lot of fun talking about pop culture and what it says about healthy and unhealthy relationships. So these webinars are free, they're bi-weekly, and we do send out a schedule every single season, basically. So we just started our winter season this Friday. So those are, oh, and we're on social media, but everybody is. So if you want to know anything about that, actually our TikTok's hilarious. Highly recommend checking out our TikTok. Instagram's fine. Michael.
Yes, could you give us a ballpark statistic, if you know, or Joe, maybe you know, what percentage of Monroe students, K through 12, are experiencing domestic violence, or maybe Chief Jolly? And then the second question I had is, Chief Jolly, what do you have to say about Chris? Put you right on the spot there, and what they're doing. It sounds incredible, but wanted to hear what your experience has been.
Well, I would just say that, since I've been here for 4 years, and probably before that, we've had a domestic violence advocate here in the building. So we're very supportive of that, and we're grateful for the services they provide and the support that we're able to get each other to assist the victim. So excellent program and a great resource.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed our partnership with Monroe. Monroe is a uniquely situated city in Snohomish County, I think. So the problems that happen in Monroe feel further away than Monroe actually is. It's a very interesting spot in the community, and so it's, I think, been really helpful to have somebody out there. But I'm just talking up my organization a little bit there. As far as the statistics go, there's not. That's a great question. And it's really difficult to figure out what the answer to that is at the point in time, right? Studies nationally say that 1 in 6 to 1 in 7 young women have experienced some sort of intimate partner violence by the time they graduate high school. And if you expand that to stalking, harassment, those sorts of definitions, it gets a little bit more so, like we're getting close to the 1 in 5, 1 in 6 range. So that means 15 to 20% of young women are experiencing some sort of intimate partner violence before they even have legal options available to them that require the age of majority. Young men experience it about a 1 in 12 ratio, so it is lighter for young men. But again, that's an entire group. That's for everybody who ends up being 18. So while people are younger than 18, and as it's happening, it's going to be a little bit less percentage. But it is significant. There's in Snohomish County itself, that's, let's see, over 15,000, maybe over 10,000 cases where somebody has experienced intimate partner violence before they have any rights to representation in a court of law. So that is what our prevention team partly works on, is trying to get those numbers way down. We want everybody to hit 18 and experience their first love and then just be happy for the rest of their lives, like some of us have been able to do. That's what we think everyone deserves, and that's what we want to try to accomplish. And we want to help the young people who might not be able to identify how to appropriately be in a romantic relationship before they are in a romantic relationship. It's a hard conversation to have sometimes.
And I'd add, so 2021 Healthy Youth Survey data show a decline locally in those numbers, Pastor Michael. So witnessing domestic violence in the past year, in 2016, about 23% of students in middle and high school told us that they had witnessed DV, so 1 in 4. In 2018, middle school dropped to 1 in 5, about 20% exactly. And in 10th grade, 29.1%. And then enter the pandemic. We do know that incidences of domestic violence and domestic disputes went up, but the number of students who told us they witnessed it went pretty significantly down. In fact, it might be statistically significant. 13% of 8th graders in 2021 told us they had witnessed domestic violence in the past year. 20.1% in 10th grade, and 8th and 10th grade are the two measures. And then it should also be noted that statewide, we saw a pretty significant decline in physical abuse, self-reports of physical abuse when school was not in session. So our big fear from an education perspective is, without the extra helping eyes on students, we'd see a lot of abuse go underreported, and it did go underreported. That's my belief. The data suggests, though, that taking away the stresses of school may have reduced a potential trigger for domestic violence. And so we saw, and physical abuse. And so we saw physical abuse and domestic violence rates go down according to Youth Voice. So I would expect those will return to normal now and on our next Healthy Youth Survey.
Yeah, I'm more inclined to believe the underreporting identification, and I'll bet you if I had some people from the YMCA here who suddenly were the only people meeting with children in person in some cases during those years, I know, because they always say, like, whoa, my God, my reports went up, my mandatory reports went up by like 200% very quickly. Stanwood, we had a whole thing out there about it. And so alternative organizations that are youth focused definitely saw a bump up of reports. Just teachers who see them every day didn't get that opportunity anymore. But that is my inclination. I am interested to see where it goes moving forward. And I'm so sorry. I see Take the Next Steps, and I forgot your name, and I'm so sorry. Oh, did she?
Cara.
I thought I lowered it, but I forgot to unmute it. It's Kara. Thank you. Hey, Chris, I was wondering, I think we've tried to reach out to you guys in the past to set up some meetings with you all. And I'm just wondering if we can set up a meeting with you. We've just been having a lot of increase in DV cases, like a lot. Recently, the last several months, we're getting kind of influx. And I would love to, there was a lot of programs that I didn't know about. I mean, I've referred people, we've had, also some people have had some really hard times getting connected with you guys that have tried and haven't gotten much. So which it could have just been like the one person that they talked to on the phone was having an off day, like but I would love to sit down, as an organization, connect with you guys, because I don't know enough of how to help these particular situations, and we really want to, they've gone through enough already. So this presentation was actually really helpful and great, and I was taking snapshots and writing down notes, but I would really love to be able to have more, like a more in-depth. Can we schedule a time to meet with you or someone?
Absolutely. Actually, yeah, I'm kind of shocked we haven't touched base, because there were a couple people that I really wanted to chat with out at Take the Next Steps. I dropped off something for you a couple years ago or I picked up something from a donor up there to bring down, and I was like, oh my gosh, we should all chat, but you guys were all busy too. So yeah, let's do it 100%. And that's the case for anybody. If your organization, if you're listening to this and you're like, you know what, I know somebody would be interested in hearing this, or I've had some real difficulties, I want somebody to yell at a little bit, which is totally okay. I'm that guy. So we can set up an opportunity, make sure all communication lines are clear, make sure survivors are getting the support that they need. 100%. And if they aren't, and it's on us, I want to fix that right away. So I am 100% on board.
Awesome. And then quick question. I'm assuming, because everybody's out, but do you have any more funding? Do you, what is, like, I'm meeting with somebody this afternoon that's a new client that's has had DV, and like, what is that even something that I should even bring up?
Well, so great question. I know we're running low on time, and this is almost an entirely different.
We can do this separately too.
Absolutely. I do want to, just to put it out there for everybody, if you have somebody who needs our services, if they need confidential shelter, if they need to be in hiding, that is 100% something that we are going to be full on in on, right? Like, that's what we always have funding for. That's our main prerogative, to get somebody safe physically. If somebody needs legal assistance due to a DV situation in the past, then it's going to be like, how long ago was it? That sort of question. Is there imminent threat of harm that might occur? Or is there another organization that might have more resources than us, so we can continue to help those who do have imminent threat of harm? So that's kind of the conversation that I would love to have with a bunch of people. That is an hour-long conversation. But I am absolutely willing to talk. That said, Karen, just send me the referral, and let's see if we can get this person helped.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Chris, there's a question in discussion. How can we have access to your calendar?
I can send you a flyer, Joe, if you'd like to share it.
Yep, I will share it.
Perfect. Well,
Awesome.
So that's how you all will have access to it. Also, you can go to dvs-snowco.org, and under education, there should be a webinar list. If it's not updated, it'll be updated shortly.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any last questions for Chris McBride? Of course, Pastor Michael.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Chris, you guys had some people at a table at our Juneteenth celebration in June. And that's, I enjoyed talking to them and appreciated your presence. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for having us. Absolutely. We are, if y'all have events and you're like, hey, we'd love to have a little table with some flyers just in case, we are there. We will be there. You just let us know. We will, that is the easiest way to make sure people know that we're here and that they can get in touch with us. We just want them to see our sign, if nothing else.
Okay. Well, Chris, I want to thank you so much. Man, I wish I could have given you more time. I know you could have kept going.
Yeah, I could. It was plenty of time. I appreciate the time that you gave me. Sorry, I was just thinking like, yeah, I don't stop talking very much. So, yeah.
Well, come back. You're on the mailing list now, so you'll get those until you unsubscribe. And
wonderful.
Anytime something's on your calendar, you're welcome to come show with the coalition, to share with the coalition.
Fantastic. I'll just plan on being here then.
So I feel like the coalition did its job. We've networked you in here and we have a greater understanding of what DBS does in the community and how we can support them. I didn't even know we had an outstationed employee at MPD until last week. That was brand new learning for me. I'm shocked that I didn't know that.
Well, and it's tough. It's a tough field to advertise, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't want everyone to know everything that's happening, but we want the right people to know everything that's happening. What's that line?
Of course, domestic violence and substance abuse prevention are share common respecters. So that's why I'm so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm going to take us down the data rabbit hole. There's only about 10 slides, so it'll be brief, but they're dense. So I'm going to share my screen. And I wanted to show you the outcome of the annual community survey 2022. So let me get, can you see my screen? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Yep, okay, perfect. So, oh, hold on, I want to move, I'm going to rearrange things here. I have such tiny screens. I'm going to move you up here and I'm going to move this here. So I'm a fan of the ORID process. So ORID is a way to have focused conversations about new information that we're learning. So ORID is an acronym, objective. What do we know about this topic? So we'll be talking about adult attitudes and beliefs around youth substance use. So why do you consider what we know in our spheres of influence and as coalition members? I want you to reflect on how you feel about what this is. What's your reaction? I'd love it if, as we're going, you could call out what issues or challenges are arising when you see this. And then really, as coalition members, what do you think our response should be? We're always looking to put community back into the community coalition. And this data certainly can help us to get there. The short way to remember what we're doing is just consider what we're looking at and what we know about it. What's your gut reaction? You know, based on your feelings, what does that mean for us? And then what should we do about it if we had our way or we could do this? And then I want to remind you that our data-based vulnerabilities, so what shows up in terms of our community vulnerabilities, are in red here. And so Monroe is more vulnerable compared to communities like us, communities that share our demographics with a population around our size. We're more vulnerable than other communities when we consider our students' lack of commitment to school in middle school. And so commitment to school is a measure or is a scale that comprises a lot of measures, whether or not you feel like you belong, whether or not you feel like the homework being assigned to you is meaningful or important, whether or not the work you're doing in school is connected to where you see yourself later in life or as an adult. And so our students in 8th grade coming out of the pandemic show a really low commitment to school. Our 10th graders fare with the rest of the state, and the state as a whole is at risk coming out of the pandemic, but our 8th graders are at higher risk than most communities and the state norm. And then our students are more at risk when we look at their attitudes about drug abuse. So we are certainly in 2021, when we looked at our data last spring, what we saw is that we continued a strong decline in regular use substance abuse rates. Now, that doesn't mean we've eliminated substance use, but compared to where we were a decade ago, we're doing historically well. The work of the coalition and all of our partners over the last 10 years, law enforcement, the city, our faith community, we've created this synergy here that's created historically low regular use rates. And so fewer and fewer students are using. And yet we know that students who are at risk because of this factor, favorable attitudes toward drug use, this risk factor tends to predict higher rates of community substance use, higher rates of juvenile delinquency and crime, higher rates of teen pregnancy, and higher rates of school dropout. So all of our programs and strategies, until we have new data, really should be mindful of where our specific vulnerability is. And then in terms of protective factors create a protective buffer around these risk factors. We do really well, or the same as most communities, but our students report that they have fewer opportunities for positive community involvement where they play a positive role. And they have fewer opportunities for pro-social family involvement, which means, the student's ability to help plan the grocery list, or what we're going to do this weekend, or getting recognized for taking care of their siblings. And so overall, this is the best our risk and protective factors have ever looked. And yet I want you to keep these factors in mind as we look at the results. So the survey respondent demographics, we had actually, I need to update this, it's 378 total respondents. Of the 378 respondents, about 1 in 10 told us that English wasn't the only language spoken at home. Survey respondents were primarily white, but we had 8% of folks who identify as Hispanic or Latino of any race, 1% Black, 1% American Indian or Alaskan Native, about 3% Asian, Native, about 1% Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, and about 4% who identified as something belonging to a group other than these categories. In terms of education, our respondents, less than 1% said that they had less than a high school diploma. About 8% had a high school diploma or a GED. About 1 in 4 told us that they had some college. 1 in 3 had a college degree. 1 in 5 had a postgraduate degree. And then when we look at gender identity, about 19%, so 1 in 5 identified as male. The majority identified as female. We had some transgender respondents, and then some people who thought that something other than male, female, transgender questioning described their identity better. And so when we look at this data, keep in mind that this data is primarily influenced by white, college-educated females. And so when we consider that ORID reflective process, the question from my mind is, how do we further change the demographic to better encapsulate the population? And so keep that in mind. Oops, shoot. From current slide. So keep that in mind too. This is something we ask every year, but virtually every respondent lived or worked in Monroe. And so we ask survey respondents their level of concern for problems that are facing youth in Monroe. And even before we go there, what I want you to know is that this annual community survey of adults is a requirement. It's a contract requirement for all community prevention and wellness initiative communities like Monroe. And that this year's questions were entirely decided by the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery at the Washington State Healthcare Authority. So this year was a short survey year. We didn't have any of our own questions attached. Next year, we'll continue to ask our own questions, which primarily focus on mental health. So we asked adults, almost 400 adults, how much of a problem is each of the following among youth in Monroe? In green, light green on the left, you see really it's two categories. It's an aggregate. The light green is not a problem at all, or it's just a slight problem. So categorizing this as not or minor problem. The higher bars are the aggregate for those adults who rated an issue moderate or serious problem. And then in blue across this chart, folks who just didn't have an opinion. They didn't feel like they had enough information to weigh in on whether it was a problem or not. And so in Monroe, once again, we're going on our third year in a row. Vaping and depression are two of the top three concerns facing youth. Previously, alcohol was one of the top concerns, and marijuana. I mean, we had a pretty close tie across the board, but these are our lowest rates of concern for alcohol and marijuana use. And so the top three that we identified, looking at the aggregate totals, grouping these together, adults in Monroe are most concerned about student vaping, about rates of depression, and about bullying, both in-person bullying and bullying on social media, with suicide concern being right behind. Just like the rules Chris established, shout out. If you have any questions, now is the best time to put them to the group. If you have any observations, concerns, or disputes, put them out there too. This is your time and really dependent on understanding this data from your point of view. So continuing this is the same question. So this chart reflects two data points, and I'm going to leave it here for a second. So this only reflects from this group, those who said, who responded, this is a really serious problem. So of the possible answers, only the highest rates in green are shown here. So the same thing, when we take out the aggregate, we still see depression, bullying, and vaping as very high concerns. And suicide drops pretty significantly when we're asking if this is a serious concern for youth in Monroe. In the past, this was much higher, but lower this year. I just didn't want to cloud up all the data. And then what you're seeing total, the orange bars tell us the actual current use rates for youth taking the Healthy Youth Survey. We're looking at 10th grade current use rates. So about 18% of adults say alcohol use among youth is a serious concern in Monroe. And what you can see is that our alcohol use rates are historically the lowest they've ever been. Less than 1 in 10 students tell us they're using alcohol regularly. And so more than a decade of work shows up in the data. And so you can see that across the board, where youth tell us about the issues that are most impacting them. You see that depression reigns number 1, and there's a match here between adult concern and youth experience, and then suicide and bullying. And so just looking at this now, I haven't done any analysis besides for putting this together for you. I see that the number of students who are making a plan to die by suicide, so they've gone beyond thinking, they haven't made an attempt, but they've made a plan to die, 14.6% exceeds the number of youth who are using alcohol regularly, or riding with drinking drivers, or using marijuana regularly. So the mental health distress numbers, wow, still just astound me. But so I wanted you to be able to see those use rates and where the community's concern is. And so it looks like the community is primarily appropriately concerned where our youth are having trouble. The community seems to be picking up on that. And then a little higher concern about marijuana use, but marijuana use remains at a historic low for us. It's the second lowest rate that we've ever had. So we're making progress, and the community seems to be aware of that based on what they're seeing. We also ask how much of a problem other drugs are So there's a category for unnamed drugs in there. And so what you saw was we asked them about their concern for youth alcohol use, riding with drinking drivers, marijuana use, and riding with intoxicated drivers, prescription drug misuse, other drugs. So 17% of respondents said there are other unnamed drugs here that I'm seriously concerned about. And I just did a checklist based on the names that they listed. And what you see is that our adults are most concerned about opiates and opioids. What's interesting is this is total opiates and opioids, but fentanyl is the #1 named opioid. So opioid awareness and consciousness is high in the community. What's interesting is that even though fentanyl was the most named opioid, it tied with methamphetamine as the most named drug. And so for 2 years in a row, we see high community concern around methamphetamine use. And so in a little bit, I want to kick it to Chief Jolly to see, again, not want to put you on the spot, Chief, but curious about what you're seeing in terms of categories of substance use, just what your gut is. We ask adults if youth wanted to, how easy would it be for them to get alcohol or marijuana? 358 people responded to this question. When we look at middle school, 38% of adults believe that it would be easy for middle school students to get alcohol. And almost 54% of adults believe it would be easy for middle school students to get marijuana. And when I look at these numbers, what I'm seeing here is that it looks like marijuana is easier to access than alcohol at this point, despite the municipal prohibition on retail production and processing marijuana in town. And so as I'm processing this with you, I'm pretty surprised. I'm pretty surprised by that. When we look at high school, we see about the same percentage. Most adults believe it's very easy for high school students to obtain alcohol and very easy for high school students to obtain marijuana. I mean, I want to know more about this, the middle school rate. Like, why is that? When we look at hard to get, right? I mean, middle school parents or middle school adults are telling us middle schoolers have a more difficult time obtaining alcohol than marijuana, but it's the opposite at high school. Adults believe it's harder for high school students to obtain marijuana as opposed to alcohol. So very curious about your response there. And we'll just revisit all these slides. When we look at parent attitudes and beliefs, we see high levels of community awareness again regarding opioids and opiates. But that awareness doesn't necessarily translate to youth alcohol or marijuana use. And so we ask, how much do you think youth risk harming themselves? So what's the risk of use if middle school students use once or twice total, if they use marijuana regularly, so once or twice a week, and if they use prescription medication that's not prescribed? And so you can see that the majority of adults believe that there's moderate or high risk posed toward middle schoolers who are experimenting with marijuana. Those numbers change when we talk about regular use. The vast majority of adults believe that marijuana does pose a risk to the developing brain. And then significantly different outcomes. Again, this is where we can really look at prevention opioid efforts around opioids and opiates from our partner agencies and federally, and a number of other factors. So clear in a way, moderate or high risk is definitely associated with using prescription medicines not prescribed. And then I also wanted you to see what our 8th graders are telling us about risk, because remember, favorable attitudes towards substance abuse is one of our risk factors, where Monroe is particularly vulnerable. And so when we look at marijuana use risk for experimentation, the vast majority of 8th graders in Monroe School District believe that there's very low or no risk associated with experimenting with marijuana. And that that same that I'm sorry, this is just my brain. And that when we ask about regular use, it's split pretty evenly, 50-50 basically, between marijuana, regular marijuana use being risky or not. We see the same thing here when we look at 8th grade prescription medicine, although youth don't believe there's as much risk involved as their parents. Still, the majority of youth believe that using prescription drugs not prescribed poses high risk. And so there's a pretty significant difference when we look at adult perceptions of risk and youth perceptions of risk. Well, no, I guess pretty much the same. Actually, pretty much the same. I was just looking at the opposite. 21, 52, and 69. And then when we look at 10th grade, almost the exact same thing. Only about less than half of adults believe there's any risk when high school students experiment with marijuana. It changes though significantly when we look at whether or not they believe regular use carries heavy risk, and universally, just like we saw in middle school, it's an almost immutable fact among their beliefs that using prescription drugs not prescribed carries pretty heavy risk. We see the same trend among 10th graders who responded to this. Most 10th graders don't believe that there's any risk with experimenting with marijuana. The majority of 10th graders believe that there is risk if you use marijuana regularly, but that's definitely trumped by the number of youth who perceive that using prescription medicines not prescribed are a risk. And so both the adult attitudes and beliefs around risk attached to use and youth beliefs around risk attached to youth really reinforce what we found in that healthy use survey data, that there are growing favorable attitudes towards substance abuse in the community. And as a coalition, you know, I wonder how we put the community back in the coalition to start addressing this. Is this grounds for starting information campaign or taking other action? We ask adults who identified themselves as being parents of 6th to 12th graders, how wrong is it for your middle or high school age child to drink alcohol, use marijuana, or use prescription drugs not prescribed to them? And parents on the survey spoke loud and clear. It's the only data set where we don't have an I don't know. Everybody has a strong opinion one way or the other. And 97%, 98%, 99%. So across the board, parents believe that it's wrong for school-age children to use substances, or for middle school students to use substances. That shifts slightly, drops by more than 10% for alcohol and marijuana use when we look at what they believe about their high school students. And yet we see the same strong resistance to parents have to youth using, high school students using prescription drugs not prescribed to them. And so, you know, when I think of community messaging, you know, getting the word out that that the norm in Monroe is that adults believe it's wrong for youth to use substances can be a pretty powerful message, especially in light of the attitudes they have around risk. So there's more than just physical risk, there's social risk. And so that's something we can talk about. We also asked adults in the community if they knew where in the community they can get rid of prescription drugs they no longer need. About 70% of adults said, yeah, they knew where they can dispose of their drugs. That's pretty significant change over the years, due in large part to Monroe Police Department. And so we're grateful. The gap here is only 11% of survey respondents said they keep their medicines locked up. So there may be an opportunity here for the coalition, if this is something you want to pursue, to follow up with Chief Jolly and partner on a prescription lockbox campaign or something else. So if I believe that the coalition wants that, I'll start moving forward. I just need to hear from you. And so I wanted to let you know I'm willing to go back to any slide. Again, I'm curious now, in our last few minutes, what stood out to you? What's your gut say about it? What should we do about it? Does anybody want to see any other data? I'm going to stop talking
Oh,
and
we
just
need
hand it
to,
over
we
to
need to
you.
hear, we need to hear back from Chief Jolly.
Ah, Chief Jolly. Chief Jolly. Let me show this slide. Chief Jolly, Pastor Michael's talking about opioids and methamphetamine being the primary substances actually named by respondents. What are you seeing at your level in terms of substances of choice?
So I think that would be pretty consistent with what we are seeing out at the street level, is mostly the opioids in various forms. Of course, are the overwhelmingly the biggest issue and problem that we're dealing with. Access to marijuana, its portability, make it easier and probably more attractive for young people to utilize and keep concealed than most other things, especially alcohol. The one thing I would point out, though, is my biggest concern is what the legislature does or does not do with the possession of drug law that is in limbo.
This
And
is known as
has
the
since
Blake decision.
The Blake decision. They did a temporary fix that is set to expire next June if they do nothing. Their acknowledged course of action for the people that have the control at the legislature have said that they wish to do nothing and hope it expires, thus reverting back to where it was, which is an unconstitutional law. That's the preferred course. My concern is if we do not have any accountability or any laws to deal with drug possession, then that is one of our most impactful tools for law enforcement to get people services, to hold people accountable, and to keep the livability level of our residents at an acceptable level. So my biggest concern is law and legislation, because the enticement would be just to people is, hey, we have a great program somewhere, come get them. That doesn't work for a lot of people. So without that law enforcement component, I think we're going to see a lot more of these problems and accessibility to illegal substances in our community and communities throughout Washington. So sorry I took up so much of the time.
No, I love hearing from you. I know we all do. Yeah, this is a good time to mention that the coalition is responsible for population level prevention as well. If we have a majority of members who want to take action around Blake to partner with law enforcement and encourage a particular response, we can do that. The coalition, because we're federally funded, can't tell legislators how to vote, but we can certainly educate about what we're doing in Monroe. I really loved, Chief, when you mentioned how we use possession in order to move people into help. And I think Monroe's track record over the last 6 to 10 years especially has been, we want people to stop using, and we know we can't just punish our way out. So how do we compel services? This is something we're interested in. We can do that. The legislative session is live now, and I'm happy to partner with people who want to help get that message out. I would just need your help to develop it. And we even have a new 39th, or now we're represented by the 12th district, I think, and we don't even know. We don't even know. Not well yet.
Well, and another thing I'd point out, Joe, is that we have this proposal out with the WASPICs, the Chiefs and Sheriffs Association, that in a nutshell says, let's bring it back to criminal misdemeanor possession. And if you do get arrested and you go before a judge, you can go one of two ways. You can go to jail for X amount of days, or you can go to a 45-day program with probation and parole, or whatever, a program that's monitored. If you graduate from that program, your criminal record goes away, and you can do that as many times as you possibly want to. And if you want to go through the rehab program 10 times, you won't have a criminal record. So it takes away the argument that people are trying to criminalize drug possession. By no means do people, or do law enforcement want to make it that addiction is something that we address by solely putting people in jail cells. That's ridiculous. But I think the WASP organization has a great solution that kind of hits all points and really emphasizes the treatment and a solution to some of these problems. I just want to say one more thing. No matter what the addictive substance is that's out there, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, the more accessible you make it, the more chance it will be used by our youth. That's just simple and easy common sense.
That's right.
And again, my biggest fear, if we take all the reins off simple drug possession, then that opens up a host of problems we've never seen before.
And just to take that one step further, the coalition over the years has engaged in a number of strategies designed to increase perception of enforcement or consequences for certain behaviors. That included working with the Monroe School Board of Directors to bring drug sniffing dogs to school when students didn't perceive that law enforcement cared about youth substance use, and they didn't believe that we would enforce those laws anyway. And we saw a pretty significant change in the data once we instituted that policy. So the research is really clear that the threat of enforcement has a deterrent effect on use. And while that still may sound a little archaic, the research is the research. It's true. And I don't think we busted anybody, but that idea that we cared and we were willing to patrol for it showed up in the data. It was one of the earliest wins of the coalition in our 2014 data. And you could just draw a hard line between youth beliefs and use rates from when we instituted that program. What else stood out to you? We're closing up here. We have about 6 minutes left to move you on with your day. Any other chunk of data in here stick out to you? And then it's okay if not. What I'd ask is think about this. If it sticks out to you on the drive home, if you want to learn more about how we can partner with MPD, just let me know. And if the coalition's ready for it, I'll start getting to work. I guess my
only question is, from your perspective, knowing kind of the programs that are in schools already and some of the other data, how do we change youth's perception that it's okay, or that it's not going to harm them, or that it's favorable?
Yeah.
Or what are your thoughts about? I mean, I love what Chief Jolly and you guys hit on as far as what we might be able to do to help people who are caught with possession, but how do we even just shift belief? What programs do we, I guess we already have that maybe address that? Do we have anything?
Yeah, I don't think we do. And we're kind of in this nexus of the Blake decision getting lots of media. You know, it's less than 10 years ago that marijuana became legalized for recreational use in Washington. And a lot of those family discussions and family use rates all contribute to that risk factor. I think the coalition has a role in helping. This is about norms. And so the coalition certainly has a role in getting the word out about what true norms are, and we can use this survey results to start to do that. Maybe the survey tells us that parents don't understand the risks well enough, and we should start hosting some town halls or bringing experts who can talk about youth marijuana use into the community. I mean, for me, the annual community survey is an opportunity, right? And so the opportunity on the contract compliance side of this work is we can justify what we want to do to respond to this in light of the survey itself. And the survey reinforces what our kids are telling us about their risk. So, my encouragement is think about this. What would be really helpful? Ask your neighbors about it, or your congregation. Like, what do parents need to know about this? What do they know about it? And then come back next month and let us know, and maybe we'll get to work.
I'm assuming we have data. I mean, I used to work in addiction recovery, and marijuana was just proven to be a gateway drug to harder drugs, cognitive dysfunction, fertility. I mean, like, there's just so many risk factors. Is there any, like, is it not common knowledge anymore that it can be a harmful substance?
I don't know if it is.
Right.
It's the same thing. I mean, it was a prescription medication, right? Medicine's safe.
Yeah, that's tricky.
How do we help parents in the community to understand the psychological impacts of use? If we start to increase their perception of risk, that will absolutely trickle down to their children.
Awesome.
So,
Well, I'll definitely be discussing, see what happens. Bring it up.
Ask your kids, Aubrey. I'm curious what your kids say.
Yeah, I will. I'll have kind of, I think, a couple different opinions there, but, and, maybe religious beliefs maybe skew that one in the home, having stronger religious beliefs, one very much not so. So it'll be interesting. I'll definitely bring it up and see what they say.
Sure.
I'll let you guys know. Yep.
Sure. Well, it looks like we've dwindled. And I'll just open this up for closing.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. I forgot to put in, I'll just put in the chat now, but the giving machines are so cool. If you guys want to check out like who the international and the local partners are, I'll just put that in the chat. But they're in Bellevue, and I'm hoping that we can get them closer. But all the cost of, so the total cost of, so whatever you pay, it goes to the charity 100%. And the cost of transactions is taken care of by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So if you want to donate and want an easy way to donate this year, let me write that down super quickly. It's Giving Machines, givingmachinewashington.org, I think. So I'll just put that there. But Merry Christmas, Pastor Michael. Did you get all the posters up for the,
thank you
the fire and
help.
police? Nice.
Yes, thank you.
It's a good opportunity for our boys to do that, for sure, for any of our youth to do that. So
Yeah,
it's good.
good. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm so grateful for you all. Thank you for hanging out with me.
And I've got to run. Thank you and Merry Christmas to all.
Merry
Yeah,
Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Okay, I think I'm going to close the meeting. Nice to see you, Dennis. Tammy, great to have you back.
Hey, Joe, wait, I still got a question for you.
Okay.
Can't leave yet.
Okay, I won't leave yet.
Okay, what did I ask you about? Oh, I sent you an email about.
Wait.